On the Wado Radio Show.
Of course, man, it is DJ Wado. It's the Wado Radio Show. It's more than music. It is ministry. And I have a guy on the phone, man. He's a church planner. He's a husband. He's a father. He's a pastor. His name is Perez, man, and he pastors in Wash Heights, New York City, man. What's up, homie?
What up, man? What's going on, dude?
I'm chilling. Well, actually, you know what? I should add to that you are a rapper, because people have heard you on records before, music videos and all that, and an author, because you're working on a book, man.
That's right. Yeah, man, really excited about some of the things happening for us on this side, man. So,
man, it's good stuff, bro. This is something I've always wanted to ask you on a personal level, Rich, man. What is it like being a not just a pastor in New York City, but basically starting a church plant, man, in one of the most, what people would always call one of the most difficult areas to reach people with the gospel in the United States?
Yeah, well, I guess the dynamics of church planning are slightly different than just kind of assuming a leadership role in an established church.
Sure.
Where, culture is established, vision is somewhat established, staff is established. When you talk about a church plant, you're talking about establishing your values, your vision, your culture from the ground up. So not only is it unique because you're pioneering something that wasn't there before, but you're talking about doing that in a global city like New York that's super dynamic, super complex, with, incredible obstacles. So not only do you have just the difficulty of pioneering altogether, but you're doing it in a global city like New York. And for us, man, I think the thing that inspired us the most, or at least myself, is that, we planted at home. So we planted in Washington Heights, where I was born and raised. I'm 32 now, and I've spent 27 years of my life in this neighborhood. And so there's nothing like being able to come back home and put the pieces together to what you once were a part of breaking. You know what I mean? So, yeah, man, it's been dope. It's been dope. I think God has been very kind to us. He's been very generous and faithful to us in the process. We've learned a ton, but I wouldn't have it any other way, man. This is home, and I know that the Lord has called us to do this kind of work here in the city. And even interestingly enough, with the dynamics of just being a minority planter, I think kind of throws in a new element to the situation. So, man, we love it. We feel like God is doing some really cool stuff. So,
man, I know for when I talk to people around the country just about this region and just like the price of real estate and what it costs to rent a space and all of that stuff, people are always like blown away, like, man, y'all pay that much for rent just to rent an apartment? Or, when I've talked to other church leaders, and just say, hey, man, it's very difficult to even have like your own unique space in New York City. People rent movie theaters, nightclubs, boxing, gyms and stuff like that on Sunday mornings to have service, man. How have you guys kind of dealt with even just that, that situation in terms of like, finding adequate space for a ministry that's growing?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like with anything that you're pioneering or starting, one of the obstacles that you run into is location or space, and the church is no different. So, for us, this Easter we'll celebrate 4 years since we kind of went public with our ministry. Prior to that, we were doing just groundwork, gathering folks, vision building, kind of building up our DNA among our core group. And then Easter of 2012, we launched into weekly services. And so we'll celebrate 4 years.
Wow.
This coming
Has it been
Easter,
that
which
long,
is super
bro?
dope. It has, man. It actually feels longer, honestly, because of just the back work we'd been doing a year and a half prior.
Yeah.
But yeah, it has been, at least for public ministry. And so over the course of these last 4 years, we've been in 4 different spaces. And if you know anything about transitioning that much and that in that small amount of time, man, that kills momentum. That kills whatever culture you're trying to build. That kills the family vibe because you keep having to transition from place to place. So initially, when we started the church, we were meeting out of my boy's apartment. You guys know him, Andy Mineo.
Yeah,
Andy Mineo has been part of the team from the very beginning. And when we started the church meeting on Sundays, we started meeting in his apartment with a bunch of other dudes that were part of the court team, solid brothers that have been faithful. And we started meeting there. We weren't there too long before we transitioned into a boxing gym, which was incredibly dope. It was just the ideal spot for the dude. You know what I mean? It's like you could play with the punching bag right before service, and then you find a seat, listen to a sermon, do some dope worship, and then once church is done, you get to play with the punching bag again. So it was the ideal place for the guy, but for the ladies, it wasn't. Family, honestly, because it wasn't family friendly. And that hurt us because, while families wanted to be a part of what was happening, they just couldn't see their kids being in a boxing gym. I mean, there was tons of sanitizing, prepping that we had to do before the church. I mean, we literally had to commit 4 hours prior to service starting just to make sure that the spot was clean and sanitized. I mean, you talk about a boxing gym with dudes are sweating, blood is all over the place. You just got to take your time to clean. So we was there for about a year and a half, and that was dope. And then we transitioned into a private school auditorium, which was kind of like a mezzanine kind of sub-basement situation. And that was just prone to floods. And so we was dealing with floods all the time. And, while we were grateful, it had its challenges. We were there for a few months. After that, we transitioned to another church space. That was dope. But there was some politics and legal issues with the actual space. And we were like, yo, let's get out of here before, we get kind of entangled in all the legal issues that building was going through. And so after that, we went to a Jewish synagogue. And the Jewish synagogue was actually perhaps the easiest place that we've been in as far as just legal contracts. The landlords were incredibly hospitable.
Wow.
I mean, dude, it was just incredible, man. It was so dope being in the synagogue, getting to build with the rabbis there. It kind of helped our kind of interfaith relationships and just really lean in, see where, people's stories are coming from. It was just dope. It was probably the dopest experience that we've had as a church as far as space goes. But we knew that was going to be interim because it was on the wrong side of the neighborhood. We wasn't, the neighborhood around that spot wasn't the demographic we were trying to reach. It was more the affluent.
Yeah.
And we was trying to really get in the hood. And so, we knew that place was going to be an interim spot. And then finally, which is where we're at now, we signed a contract with a local charter school in the neighborhood. And it's this, huge gym / auditorium, capacity for 800 classrooms. And, we're in there for the next 10 years at least. So that gives us room not only to grow, but it gives us room to establish a culture of hey, man, we're planted, we're here to stay, it's right across the street from the projects. It's a school, so we get to have real meaningful touches with students in the neighborhood. It's just the ideal spot, man, because for the New York City church and for the majority of global city church planning, you can't even think about owning your own space.
Right.
The only ways that, owning your own space is after perhaps decades of campaigning, capital campaigning, raising up financial partners. And then if God in his grace were to open a miraculous door for you to own, $1.5, $2 million property, then it seems like the only way that churches in New York City and in other global cities like New York could even think about owning their own space. It's just a different monster when it comes to the real estate world in cities like ours, you know what I mean? So, man, that's been the journey for us as far as space. Just in the last 4 months that we've been in this new location, I mean, we've seen an incredible hike in attendance, and we've seen the things that numbers can't tell, which is ownership, like a higher morale. People are encouraged. Leadership is developing. Like, it's just on the rise. The trends is people are inspired. People are encouraged. And when you get inspired people and encouraged people and transformed people, I mean, there's nothing really the church can't do. And so that's where we're on now, man. And we're really excited about what God is doing.
Man, you should be, bro. That sounds like an amazing thing that or amazing door, I should say, that God has opened up to have a facility in a space like that for the next 10 years. Man, that's huge, bro. You mentioned something a few minutes ago, and I think you're allowing people to see a side of Andy Mineo that most people didn't even know existed. Just being a part of this church plant team, bro. What's it like pastoring somebody like that, man? Like someone who's, for all intents and purposes, Andy is a Christian celebrity, bro. Like he's kind of a big deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I guess the way I look at it is, I've known Andy for, I want to say well over a decade. We met at City College with Alex Medina. And that's where we all really vibed together. And then we did several years together of traveling with Nikki Cruz Outreach,
with
Truth's family. With Pastor David Ham is somewhat of a big brother to all of us, really. And so I guess, that history really influences the way I see Andy. And it's impossible not to see Andy as Andy Mineo that the world sees. You know what I mean?
Sure.
We see his platform, we see his rise of influence. But I feel like at the end of the day, I see the Andy I met at City College. As far as just that relationship goes, like, man, that's homie. Like that's little brother. You know what I mean? And I try to navigate my relationship with him as such. But I think also, too, Andy, when my wife and I were living upstate and getting ready to come back home to plant this church, he was really the only one, along with my sister and my brother-in-law, that were like, yo, I'm ready. When you come, I'm ready. Because Andy's just got a pioneering spirit. And he is really zealous for kind of like church ministry work, obviously like all of us are in the beginning of our faith journey. And so I got back and he was the first one on board, like, yo, can I lead a group? Let me talk. Let me be here. Let me serve. What can I do? And so I feel like the challenge has been to try to maintain that kind of relationship with him where I can say, yo, bro, you got to stay rooted no matter how big the platform gets, no matter how much your influence grows. What's key here is that you remain rooted for this intimate crowd so that it would be reminders to you of, man, what your ultimate call is, right, which is to love God and love people well. And so it has its challenges, though, because I feel like, he's got a huge platform and like you said, for all intents and purposes, somewhat of a celebrity. And his platform is bigger than his pastors. You know what I mean? So how do you navigate that? And
I couldn't imagine that, bro.
Yeah. But honestly, man, the biggest tension has been for me navigating the pastor-friend dynamic. You know what I mean? Like it's the I'm your friend, but I'm also your spiritual authority.
Sure.
And that's been tough, but I feel like in the last 2 years, really since his rise, in mainstream hip hop has kind of taken place. Like, man, Andy is just he's so good at opening himself up to the people that he knows will do something about what he opens up about. You know what I'm saying? Andy's not going to open up to just anybody, and I think there's wisdom there. But
smart.
As a person who's involved in his life, Andy lived with me and my wife and my family for 6 months before he got this apartment, and then just before he signed with Reach. And so that informs a lot of the relationship. And so Andy sees me and my wife as spiritual authorities, man, and he's done really well at maintaining that. And we've done really well at saying, yo, man, I'm here as your boy, but I want you to also see me as your spiritual authority, as your pastor. And so it's interesting because Andy wrote the foreword of my book.
Oh, wow.
And he wrote the foreword of the book, and at the very end he says, not only is Rich a really good friend, but he's my pastor. And even that simple acknowledgement is profound.
It's massive.
Because it says, guys, if anything in my life, that there's a spiritual authority, and that's this guy. And I think that's helpful not only for his own awareness, but for his fans. Like, his fans need to know that there's a spiritual authority there. And,
absolutely.
Just like everyone else, has a spiritual authority. At least every other believer that submits himself. So, listen, I won't say that it's been clean. I think it's been challenging, but nothing short of faithful, in my opinion. But I feel like that's what everyone's relationship with their spiritual authority should look like. It should be challenging. It should be fruitful. It should be exemplary. You know what I mean? So, yeah, man.
That's good, bro. DJ Wado Radio Show. We are talking to Pastor Rich Perez, pastor of Christ Crucified Fellowship, Wash Heights, New York. Man, talk to us about this book, brother. I didn't realize you had a book coming out, so I don't even know if we're supposed to talk about this if you've announced it yet. But you did mention it, so I don't feel so bad bringing it up, man. But
no, it's all good. It's all good. No, I had actually written a blog post, several months ago, kind of inviting folks to be praying for me because I was getting ready to, start working on the book. But so the book is called Mikasa Uptown, Learning to Love Again. And it's really a memoir of my life growing up in Uptown. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm 32 now, and I've spent 27 years of my life in this neighborhood. And it's been interesting because with that comes a lot of really unique and cool dynamics that really challenge you. You spend enough time in one place, you're bound to see the grace of God. Like, you can't be in one place, experience the same things, and not see the grace of God. Dude, I think it's a really cool story. The reason why I did a memoir instead of just kind of like a teaching book, which most pastors do, is several reasons. I think one, I just feel like I'm a storyteller by nature. That's how my teachings are. I do teach, and I try to pull lessons out from my stories, but I just feel like I naturally like to tell stories because I think life is jam-packed with lessons and glimpses of the goodness of God in our very stories. So I think, one, I naturally tend towards storytelling. But two, I felt like I wanted to do something different outside of what a pastor is, quote unquote, supposed to do. Like, he's supposed to write books on theology, and he's supposed to write books on, teachings and commentaries. But I'm like, man, I think I want to just tell my story and point to Jesus through storytelling rather than just, writing a book on theology or what I think about this or what I think about that. The book also kind of has like this defense of the immigrant's story narrative kind of underlying it. I talk a lot about my parents. My parents are immigrants from the Dominican Republic, and so I tell the story as a second-generation Dominican about the immigrants' narratives in this country, and oftentimes how they seem second class and how that has a lot to do with our faith and how we should be thinking about those things, especially, in times like we are today, kind of the social climate we live in. Like, I thought it was important for me to talk about, hey, this is my home. This is Mikasa Uptown. And I want you to know the stories that fill this place up, stories of the immigrants, stories of the second generation. Like, even I have my own dynamics I live with as a second generation. I'm not an immigrant, and I'm also not American, as far as like, I'm American because I was born here and I'm a citizen, but I still feel second class because I'm brown. You know what I mean? And I still don't feel American sometimes. But I also don't fit in my parents' culture because if I go to DR, and I could hang with the language, I could do all the culture stuff, but to the folks out there, I'm a I'm a Dominican Joe, which is kind of like a gringo of sorts. Like you're just the kid of an immigrant. You're the kid of an immigrant.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I feel like as a Dominican dash American, I live in the hyphen. Like I exist in that little hyphen.
Sure.
And I don't know what it looks like to exist in that. I feel like I'm still trying to figure out my own cultural and ethnic identity. And so there's some of that in the book. I talk a lot about it by, via stories and things I'm wrestling with. So, yeah, man, I'm excited for the book. I just think that anyone who lives in the city or in an inner city context can pick up this book. Anyone who's looking to learn about the inner city or the urban context can pick up this book and be inspired about how to inspire faith, commitment, and hope and imagination in the places where you live. So it's kind of like a rally call to say, yo, don't leave your hood. Stay there and be part of the change that happens in your hood. So,
man, I love that because most people that grow up in the hood, born in the hood, they're trying to get out, and they don't always think about going back. Yeah, that's the narrative. I was talking to I was with Seb the other day. Seb Young that does the video stuff, lives in the Bronx.
Yeah.
You know Seb. We all
Yeah, I know Seb.
He grew up Lower East Side, man, and we were I was giving him a ride downtown because we were out shooting stuff in Midtown or whatever. So I'm giving him a ride down there. And man, he's telling me all this stuff about the neighborhood and all of that stuff, and I'm just like, I'm hearing you talk, and I'm just like, man, like so many of us are trying to get out. You know what I mean? Like we're trying to get out, and it's like, then this is what happens. We get out, somebody else helps make the neighborhood better, and then we're frustrated because we're like, man, I miss the old neighborhood. But it's like, yo, you went around to help, change it into what it is. So that's part of the frustration.
Absolutely. Yeah, that definitely is part of the frustration. And, I talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Because the book is really, the layout of the book really comes from a sermon I preached a while back at our church, where it's kind of like, the president gives the State of the Union, and we do something similar here at the church where we take one Sunday out of the year and I give the state of the church. Like, where are we? What did we do? Did we accomplish our goals? Where are we headed? And I remember this one year, I preached the state of the church, and essentially I said to the church that, the reason we exist as a church is to plant our roots, make homes and build families, love neighbor, trust Jesus, and die well. And really the book is laid out in that way. Like the chapters are those big headings, like plant your roots. And in my Plant the Roots chapter, I talk a lot about, hey, listen, like the communities we live in, especially in New York City, are changing a lot.
Yeah.
And I think the only reason why they're changing, there's changes is really twofold. Like, we've got a more affluent community coming into our spaces.
Right.
But also, too, we're not standing up and saying, hey, like, we want to see diversity and we want to see people come in, but we want to see them come in with an air of contribution, not replacement. We want to see more collaboration and less superiority. You know what I mean? But if we're not invested ourselves in the community, then it makes all the sense for folks to come in and make the community, quote unquote, better, and then the community looks different, and then we're frustrated. But as you said, like, we can't get frustrated if we're not invested ourselves. And so really the book is a charge to people to say, man, if you've got a dream, if you want to inspire your community the way that the gospel and the story of God has inspired you and transformed you, then take faith, take hope, take an imagination, and make it a part of the rhythm that you live with in your neighborhood so that people would see a new way of community. You know what I'm saying? And so, I just think, man, that's spot on, dude. Like, what are we doing to help push back and create new environments for people to exist together in ways that they've never seen before? And, Mikasa Uptown is really just, hopefully, like inspiring in that way to be just telling my story here in Uptown New York. So,
man, that's good, bro. I would love your thoughts on this, bro. Like, one of the things that, you didn't necessarily use this word, but I mean, this is what's happening in a lot of, like, it's happening out here in Newark, for sure, is gentrification. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I felt like just kind of watching this happen, and this is like the first community I've lived in where I'm actually seeing the process every day. And, you know, like, I feel like one of the things that we don't always do in our neighborhoods, and you hinted at this, is we live there, but we don't always own the places that we live in, right? We don't always own our properties. And I feel like a lot of times, and again, I just would love to hear your thoughts on this, man. It's like when that type of process starts to take place, so when developers start to say, take interest in your neighborhood, and the community planning boards and the CDCs and all of that stuff start taking interest in the community, it's like, hey, man, if you own property here and this community improves, you actually come out on top financially. But I think a lot of times it's the people that don't own that end up getting pushed out and end up the most frustrated.
Yeah, I mean, sheesh, I have so many thoughts on gentrification.
I opened a can of worms, right?
Yeah. I'm really just trying to gather my thoughts, really, because there's so much I could say. But I feel like when you look at the history of the word gentrification,
Yeah.
at the core of it, man, I forget the lady that kind of coined the phrase, but it was back, I believe, in the 1940s when that phrase was coined. But really at the core of gentrification is the idea of enriching a community, however, not at the benefit of all those that are in the community. So not everybody benefits from the changes.
Sure.
I think what we're seeing now more than ever is that making a community better really means making a community richer. And not everybody wins when that's the way we're defining better.
True.
When better means economically healthier or economically, better or richer, really we're just thinking of a small demographic of people in those very gentrified communities that are benefiting from it. So I just think you start off on the wrong foot when you think that way about change. And really, it's not revitalization. It's not enriching the community. It's really just giving the community a facelift. And when you get a facelift, you get rid of some things.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, though, that's those on the margins. You know what I mean? But man, when it comes to the changing nature of communities nowadays, like you said in Newark, we're seeing this here in Uptown.
Yeah.
Like, I think the biggest beef is that the affluent and the poor can't see that they need each other. And this is really a theological issue. You know what I mean? This is really a theological issue because
break this down, brother. He said theological issue. Break this down, brother.
Well, it is, and here's why. When the Lord created us in Genesis 1, He created us distinct from one another, yet interdependent. Like we need each other.
Yeah.
Like we need each other. There's a reason why God looked at Adam and said it's not good that man should be alone, so He created Adam. That's not merely a marriage verse. You know what I mean? That's a human experience verse that says we need a diversity of humans to come together to show off the incredible beauty of God. Like,
that's good.
It couldn't have just been Adam on its own to show off the image of God, right? Because that would have been unfaithful. One, because God is a community, right? That's why, that's a Christian distinctive. God is a community, 3 persons in one. But also, God is so unimaginably diverse in His very nature that He needed multiple people. That's why He created Eve and genders and ethnic and color. You know what I'm saying? So I think the biggest failure or the biggest thing that's hurting, the changing communities or the changing nature of communities is that we just don't see that we need each other. The affluent don't see that they need the poor, and the poor don't see that they need the affluent. It's this it's this failure to see the interdependent nature of human experience that God created us with. And I think that, that's the base. That's at the heart of what I think is missing when it comes to gentrification. But yeah, man, I just think like if you're going to have an agent, if you're going to have a series of things that exist for, gentrifying communities to fight gentrification, at least in ways that is unjust, because I think gentrification could happen in a way that's like helpful and meaningful, because you don't ever want your communities to remain stagnant. I'm not fighting for Uptown to stay Hispanic. I'm fighting for Uptown to look more like the kingdom of God, and that demands diversity. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not here, raising my fist in the air and saying young lords. I'm saying like, I love my Hispanic heritage. I love my culture. And I love the fact that for the last 40 years, this has been a primarily Hispanic community. But I love seeing new faces. However,
Sure.
I don't want new faces to come in at the expense of old faces. You know what I mean? And I just think that the dominant culture doesn't know how powerful they are when they walk in a room. So I like to think of this in the context of the novel that I read back in elementary school called Of Mice and Men. I don't know if you've read the book, but Of Mice and Men.
I don't think so. But see, I wasn't really reading in elementary school, man. I was always trying to find the Cliff Notes. So.
You stupid. Nah. So yeah, I'll give you the synopsis. So Of Mice and Men is the story of two brothers, Lenny and George. Lenny is the younger, but he's the bigger one. He's 6'4", 250, huge kid. But he also has mental issues. George is the older brother. He's, average size dude, and, he doesn't have mental issues. The book tells the story of these two brothers kind of growing up in, kind of some backwoods, and I think that, when dominant culture moves into these kind of spaces, they just miss that. They miss that. And I think it has a lot to do with privilege. And I don't want it to be that George, the minority, or it feels like that's who, George kind of signifies, doesn't have to kill them. You know what I mean? Hopefully we can talk to George and say, hey, you're hurting people. You know what I mean? Before culture comes to get you and kill you, let me be the one to tell you that you're walking around hurting people just by being in the room. And so, I just think that there's a wave of dudes that I really love and respect that are being incredible voices to some of the injustices of the way gentrification and change in our neighborhoods is happening. And again, I get into this a little bit in the book. I mean, I try not to be, super political in my book, but, that's part of my story. I see this now. I saw it growing up, and I try to highlight some ways that I approach it, and I try to highlight some ways that I talk to white people when they try to move in the neighborhood. Rich, what do? I want to move in the hood because I really feel called to the Hispanic culture, and I try to be provocative about things and just tell them, well, don't move here. You know what I mean? Because if you move here with the wrong posture, then you end up really hurting us. As much good you want to do, you end up hurting. You've got to come in here with the right posture, and we've got to have the right posture in receiving you. Because on the flip side of that, I don't want to say that this is all the dominant culture's fault. I do think that the minority culture, even though there's a lot of injustice done toward us, I do feel like we're not receptive to change, and we could become silos if we're not careful. You know what I'm saying? Like I can make this neighborhood like, yo, my fist in the air, young lords, I just want it to be Hispanic. And that's not kingdom. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not here to build the kingdom of the Hispanic culture. I'm here to build the kingdom of God. And that means Hispanics as much as whites. That means blacks as much as Asians. That means affluent as much as poor. That means every social class. That means every ethnic. That means every tongue. And so we just got to find the balance of, one, fighting injustice when it's when change is happening in a way that not everyone benefits, but also saying, we want to see diversity. We just want to see it done healthily. So, yeah, I guess there's a lot more I could say about the issue, but man, those are just some kind of initial thoughts on how I've kind of seen it and process it and try to speak into it as a spiritual leader in the community with a church, through my creative, avenues. So, yeah, man.
Man, that's good, bro. You got me really anxious to read this book, and I know you telling me you have an EP that may be accompanying it too.
Ew. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I do. I have a 5-track EP that I'm hoping to put out with the book. Really excited about that because, as I was just telling you earlier, music is just something I'm really passionate about. Over the years, I've kind of put it on the back burner just because I felt like my responsibility was to really build up this church, and there's still a lot more work to do. And, I see myself serving this church until the Lord calls me out of it or calls me home. And so I felt like that was my responsibility to help establish this and work at it. But music just refreshes me. Being able to write, being able to be creative refreshes me. The book is a creative outlet for me. But yeah, man, there's a 5-track EP with it, and it's going to be in line with the book. So I'm just pulling little topics and little stories from the book and just turning them into songs. So I'm really excited about that. It's like with any art, you're nervous. You don't know what people are going to think or say. I haven't done music publicly in so long. You never know what the response is going to be. But I feel like for me, it's, whether people vibe with it or not, the fact that I can do it, like I said, is more of a therapy for me, just because music is something that's woven in my fabric. So.
Yeah, I mean, listen, bro. Like every time you've put music out, I've seen good feedback, man. You know what I mean? It's. I mean, you're a busy guy, so you can't put music out all the time, but.
No, and that's one thing, man. Every time I have put, even with the track I put out last year with the video, like that got really dope feedback, and it was really encouraging just to see that people were vibing with it. But again, I feel like even looking back at that, I felt like I found more life in doing it, especially when I shot the video with my son and dudes from Scout to Honor. Like, I just found so much life being creative and being able to, pour out in that way, And again, the feedback was dope. I started getting super, super dope feedback and just feedback I wasn't even expecting. Like, people just really encouraged and saying, yo, that's my story, and I'm really excited to see that. Like, that was dope. But I just found so much life in actually doing that kind of work. So, yeah, but I'm looking forward to it, man. I feel like people are going to vibe with it and enjoy some of the videos that we got accompanying some of the songs, and working on a little short film for the book as well. So,
man, that's what's up, bro. Well, man, I'm happy for you, Rich, man, and praying for you, man, that the Lord will continue to use you in the way that he is. And do you have a release date or anything for the book or the EP yet, or?
No, so there's no release date. The book is in its second round of editing, and once I get that back, I'll know exactly. But it'll be sometime in April.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, it'll be sometime in April, either late April or early May. I'm trying to avoid the early May because I know Lecrae's putting out his book early May. So
yeah,
I don't wanna take attention from that. Or I mean, not that I would, but just for the sake of marketing, I want to make sure that it's laid out well so that people can catch it. So. And I'm really excited for some of the endorsements, man. Some really good folks that supported. Like I said earlier, Andy wrote the foreword, and David Ham actually wrote the afterward. So
nice.
I'm really excited about both those brothers getting people reading both of their stuff. So,
man, that's killer, bro. Well, Rich, brother, real quick too, man. Website that people can kind of go to connect with you, and any social media you want to share, any of that stuff, bro?
Yeah. So you guys could always visit me at micasauptown.com, MICASA uptown.com. At Rich Perez is my Instagram. At Rich Perez 729 is my Twitter. You can always find me on Rich Perez Facebook, and then you can visit the church's website, man. Church is doing some really dope stuff. We got some really dope people. Man, we just got a squad, man. We got a really dope team at the church. I mean, so y'all can check out the website, ccf-nyc.com. You'll enjoy a lot of the visuals done by our girl, Lorenice Cespedes. She's a beast. Her and the visual team are always killing it. You guys can check out the sermons on our podcast. And yeah, man, if you're blessed by what you see happening in New York, visit us on the Give page and, support the ministry in New York, man.
Amen. Well, Rich, man, thank you, brother, and appreciate, man, just spending some time with us, bro.
Always, man. I appreciate you, bro. Thank you for making some time to ask some questions. On the Wado Radio Show. On the Wado Radio. On the Wado Radio Show, where it's much more than music, it's ministry.